Hello everyone, welcome to a French Open review video. A few days after the final people that finished the event, the men's singles final on Sunday, which saw Carlos Alcaraz win his third major title, beating Alexander Zverev in 5 sets. So it was a very tight match, could have gone either way, but Alcaraz really showing a determination and a increased level in that final set that I think saw him over the line. I think Alcaraz has this ability to just raise the intensity of his play when he really needs to. So when his back's against the wall, he can find an extra gear, access a little bit more power, a little bit more dynamism and speed around the court, and also that ability to just put his opponent under pressure. And once he gets in control of the rally, he really doesn't relinquish the control. And I think this was the main factor in enabling him to turn the match around, because Alexander Zverev had gotten into a position of strength in the match. He was 2 sets to 1 up and actually showing some possibilities. Like, he was able to orchestrate and create certain patterns that were countering Alcaraz's strengths, but also enabling him to damage the Spaniard as well. So obviously Zverev 6'6", he was serving very well, especially that one out wide on the deuce side, opening up the spaces to attack Alcaraz's backhand, which obviously isn't quite as strong as his forehand side. And Zverev was just leaning into that backhand two-hander and creating options, pulling him cross court, then up the line, and even his volleys were pretty good. And Alcaraz wasn't having it all his own way, but I think Zverev's physical level perhaps did dip in those subsequent sets, so sets 4 and 5, where I felt like Alcaraz started getting a better read on the Zverev serve. He was, especially that one out wide, he was accessing it and tracking it down really well. And he just had too much power in the end. He did seem to overpower Zverev, especially in that last set. He was really punching through the German's defence, and he really did push Zverev back and make it difficult for him to regain control of some of those points. So I think Alcaraz was the worthy winner, guys, like getting his 3rd Grand Slam, like I said, at the age of 21. The youngest player to win a Grand Slam on all surfaces in the men's side. So that was very impressive from him. And on the women's side, guys, in that final, it was also somewhat of a show of dominance from Iga Swiatek. She beat Jasmine Paolini of Italy in straight sets, and she was just serene throughout the tournament. She had a hiccup, obviously, in the second round against Osaka, where she was down, I believe, 5-2 in the final set, maybe even faced a match point. But Osaka really had Swiatek in a lot of trouble, but the Polish #1 seed was serene in the subsequent matches, and she just plays in such a relentlessly consistent manner. Like, she just controls the point and doesn't allow the opponent any glimmer of a possibility to find equality in the rally or parity. Like, it seems as if there's always a situation where Swiatek is controlling territory, she's on top of the baseline, she's manoeuvring the opponent, and she packs a punch off both the forehand and backhand. Very consistent in how she sets up and prepares for each shot. It seems her footwork is sound every single time, getting her in the best possible position to play an aggressive shot. And it was her aggression that won through, I think. Like, especially again in the semi-final against Coco Gauff, she was playing a very dangerous player, 3rd seed, but she was able to really nullify Gauff's play through this consistently aggressive strategy. And her professionalism, consistency is just enabling her to ascend to new heights, and it's her 4th French Open title, I believe 5th Grand Slam in total. So it's just staggering, really, the numbers that she's starting to assemble in her career. She's just been incredible. So she was very much the deserved winner, people, as was Alcaraz. And just to dissect some of the other stories, people, in terms of both sides of the draw, we can start with the men's. So obviously Alcaraz won against Zverev in the final, but he also showed an ability to rise to the challenges thrown at him by some other really good players. So Jannik Sinner in that semi-final, obviously Sinner became the world number one when Djokovic withdrew before his quarter-final. So he's playing the best player in the world statistically, and Sinner was also on form. He went into a 2-1 lead as well, I think, or certainly took the first set. And Alcaraz again showed that ability to turn the tables and just find the extra gear. And this is something we have to really note about Alcaraz, is his, I keep mentioning this fifth gear that he's able to access, where it's like a special power or a secret weapon that he has up his arsenal, where other players, they have like a ceiling that's not quite as high as Alcaraz's ceiling. So if Alcaraz really is pushed and put under pressure, he can just raise the level to a height that other players can't match, and it's very difficult to suppress once he gets that level, and once he's found momentum, you can't really pull him back. And Sinner found that to his cost, Tsitsipas found that to his cost in the quarterfinals. He actually looked a bit more vulnerable in the earlier stages, maybe a bit of rustiness when he played De Jong in that second round. He obviously lost a set in that one. But ultimately, he was just phenomenal, people, all tournament. I mean, other storylines, obviously Rafa Nadal's first round exit. We covered that earlier in the tournament, but the 14-time winner of the event possibly playing his last match at the French Open. We'll see how it goes for him, people, moving forward, but that was a significant match, and I thought Nadal played well. He had his moments. He took Zverev to a tie-break in one of the sets. He lost in straights, but you felt as if he was bringing a level of quality that would challenge most other players in the draw, but obviously being seeded against Zverev in that first round was always going to be a difficult assignment, and so it proved. Zverev in general, people, had a really creditable tournament. I thought he navigated his way through the draw really well, obviously from the get-go, because he had to be on his mettle to beat Nadal, but then in the subsequent rounds he had a couple of tricky five-setters against Griekspoor and Rune back-to-back that he came through. He disposed of Casper Ruud really well in the semi-finals. Obviously Ruud had a little bit of an upset stomach, which was a shame for him and also for me, because obviously I'm a big fan of Casper. But fair play to Zverev, he was able to take advantage of that, and he kept his own physical state really constant and really healthy throughout the tournament. And that's a skill in itself, like eating the right foods, minimising the possibility of getting illnesses. Obviously it's a high degree of bad luck for Ruud, but you also got to say that not getting hurt or injured or ill is also a skill. So finding a way to avoid these possibilities, and that's what Zverev was able to do, and got through to the final, could have won it. And you feel like an interesting question and a discussion point now, people, is can Zverev take the next step and win a Grand Slam? Because obviously he's made 2 finals now. He's won an Olympic gold, he's won a couple of ATP Tour finals, the tournament where the top 8 players face off at the end of the season-ending Tour finals. He's won that a couple of times. He's won numerous Masters 1000s. Obviously he won the Rome Masters immediately before the French Open. So can Alexander Zverev take the step up and win a Grand Slam? The thing about it now, people, is it's very difficult, because Alcaraz is going to be there every time, unless obviously he's injured, and it's not easy to beat Alcaraz when he's turning up at these tournaments on top form. And you've got Sinner, another guy who's really raised his level this year. won a Grand Slam at the Australian Open. He's hungry for more. You've got these two younger players now who have gotten that weight off their shoulders by winning a Grand Slam. So you think they're only going to go from strength to strength, whereas guys like Zverev, Tsitsipas, Casper Ruud are still chasing that first Grand Slam. So they're playing with that little bit of pressure and inhibition. So although Alcaraz and Sinner are younger players, they've actually experienced more success in terms of the highest or the most lucrative prizes. So it's going to be tricky now for Zverev, but he's got a lot of dedication and determination to still be doing what he's doing despite the setbacks. So Wimbledon will be interesting. Can he translate his form from clay onto grass? I think he's got a game that could suit grass with his big serve, but he does occasionally retreat a little bit behind the baseline. So that won't necessarily aid him on grass. Then other sort of contenders, people, if we just shift the conversation forwards onto Wimbledon now. Alex de Minaur, Australian #1, obviously made the quarterfinals. He had a great tournament, beat Daniil Medvedev in the last 16. So de Minaur could be a guy to step up at Wimbledon. Then other players, Casper Ruud, I mentioned him, people, made a semi-final, and he looked so good in those first 4 rounds. Obviously he didn't play his quarterfinal because Djokovic withdrew, so he had the bye through to the semi, but in those first 4 rounds he beat some very good players. Taylor Fritz, he beat Echeverry, he beat Davidovich Fokina, the Spanish player. Excuse me if I got that pronunciation wrong, but he shows people, or he showed in that tournament, that his game is evolving all the time. He's constantly looking to control the play with his forehand. So any ball that's vaguely in the centre of the court, even more towards his backhand, he loves to step around and dictate with the forehand. Interestingly, a way to potentially counter that I observed during this stretch was to perhaps attack the forehand, attack the strength to open up the backhand side. So Ruud, he mentioned in his post-match interview after the loss to Zverev the need to become a better player, to become a more rounded player. And I wonder if part of that is working out how to attack a bit more from the backhand side, which obviously he can do. But on grass, it's not going to be easy, because you look at the best grass court players that we've seen over the last few years. On the men's side, you've had Djokovic win slams, Alcaraz, Federer, Nadal, even Murray. What they tend to do is, the majority of those players anyway, is take the ball early on the backhand. So Murray's best shot with his backhand. Djokovic, I think his backhand's incredible. He can take it early on the backhand side. Federer as well, used to step in with his single-hander. Yeah, Alcaraz is obviously a real gunslinger in the sense that he brings the heat from the back of the court. So Ruud's going to have to find a way to do the same. How can he take it early and initiate and control the rallies on grass as he has done on clay? That's the question for me about Ruud. So all of these aspects, people, are going to be really interesting heading into Wimbledon. And I just mentioned his name, Novak Djokovic. Will he even be there? Because he obviously sustained a knee injury in his last 16 match against Musetti. So will he be at Wimbledon? That's a big question mark for me. I don't think he will. With a little fracture of the knee or whatever it was that he sustained, that recovery time is tight for Wimbledon on a different surface where you're sliding or slipping a bit more because it's grass. It's going to be a bit more demanding on the knees. So will Djokovic be ready? We'll have to see. And then on the women's side, people, just on the French Open, first of all, as I mentioned, it was just a very professional and dominant performance from Swiatek. The match against Osaka will live long in the memory, because I think that symbolises that Osaka is very close to a return to the top of the sport in terms of her level. Whether she can translate that into a consistent level over a number of matches at a Grand Slam. That's another hurdle she'll need to overcome, but I've got no doubt she will, given her standing and her ability, and also the way she raises her game to the pressure of the situation. She's won multiple Grand Slams, so I've no doubt she'll get that level again. And will it come in time for this Wimbledon? Potentially. You look at her as someone who could make a run at Wimbledon. I would love to see it personally. So then, what were the other big stories, people? You had a couple of upsets in the quarterfinals. So Paolini beat Rybakina, which was a really good match. Rybakina won the second set, but Paolini was able to regain control of the match in the third. And I was loving how Paolini was playing, people, with a lot of energy, a lot of verve and personality on the court. And she was spraying the ball around. Like, she's got such a good balance when she moves around the court and gets in position to play the baseline shots, both on the forehand and backhand. She really did seem at home on the clay in Paris. So fair play to Paolini. And also there was another upset, Andreeva, the youngster from Russia, beating Sabalenka in the quarterfinal. So that was incredible to see. So there were a couple of upsets there in the semi-finals, in the quarterfinals. And then Coco Gauff, as I mentioned, getting away through the draw, navigating away through the draw really well. Swiatek was a hurdle too far, but she did come back and win the doubles title on the Sunday, on the final Sunday. So that was impressive, the women's doubles title. So there were a number of interesting storylines, people. Badosa did pretty well in the tournament. Obviously lost to Sabalenka in the end, but she was showing some signs that she's potentially coming back. So, yeah, there's much to look forward to. Moving ahead, people, in the women's side into Wimbledon. Who's going to translate best onto the grass courts? That's a question. Will we see a little bit more from Madison Keys, from maybe a Danielle Collins? These are questions that are going to come into fruition on the grass, people. Who's going to step up with their game? Vondrousova, the defending champion. Jabeur, who actually did pretty well in the French Open, made the quarterfinals. She's obviously usually very good on grass. She made a couple of Wimbledon finals. So it's going to be interesting, people, to see how this French Open Wimbledon transition plays out. And I'm going to be here, people, to see how it all unravels. But let me know, people, about the French Open, any thoughts about it and any feelings that you've got heading into Wimbledon. All right, people, peace, love.